Although you leave this universe behind, a new universe awaits you. Who will you be in this one? What choices will you make?
I want to start this video off by saying that I like Starfield. I think that is important to mention right now because in this video I will be going extremely hard at one particular aspect of the game. You might have already guessed it from the title, but that's going to be the role-playing part, which is just not really what I had hoped it to be.
Okay, so I cannot help this guy. Wait, why did they start attacking each other? What's going on here? This doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't mean that the game is automatically bad, because there are a lot of parts to this game that really do work. And I do feel like that it has the X factor in certain places that make the final product more than the sum of those parts. Maybe that's still the fact that the game is quite fresh to me, but I'm about 80 hours in now and the novelty of some of the handcrafted areas like Neon or Mars haven't lost their magic just yet. I am also aware that the game has a lot of issues. It's what this game has been getting railed for online. The bugs, for example, or the invisible barriers on the planets. I have seen it all, and yes, I can agree that it is a little bit offsetting that on the low gravity moons with a maxed out boost pack, you can just fly up into space to the point where you can see the map boundaries quite clearly. Under normal circumstances, however, and when you're just playing the game to play the game, none of these issues bothered me as much. It was only when I really went out of my way to search for the shortcomings that I could find those shortcomings, and I found it pretty easy to ignore them once I just started playing. So say of that what you will, blinded by rose-tinted glasses maybe, but this is just honestly how I'm feeling. There is, however, one area of the game where I simply could not look past the flaws and just enjoy my time. Again, I'm talking about the role-playing aspect of it, which is unfortunately also the main reason that I wanted to play Starfield. If I was in there for the space combat, I would simply play Destiny. If I wanted a realistic space sim, I would try to boot up Star Citizen. If I wanted something with extensive base building, well, I can think of a few games that allow me to do that. But none of those games do the role-playing as well as I thought that Starfield would do it. The interacting with the NPCs, the stories that unfold when you do so, and the different approaches to missions and conflict that you can take. That is what I thought would make Starfield special, because this is something that Bethesda is apparently known for, and it's also something that a lot of other AAA companies don't even try anymore.
Perhaps you find all this satisfactory, but I am afraid I do not.
Now, what am I talking about when I say that the role-playing isn't all that what it's set out to be in Starfield? How can there not be role-playing with so many dialogue options in every conversation and so many seemingly different skills to pick from that all would lead to different opportunities? It is a good question to have, but I'm about to tell you and then show you that all of this is just an illusion. Almost all dialogue options that you can have with any NPC in the game all result in the same answers and the same conclusions at the end of the conversation.
We used this opportunity to take out Delgado, and at the same time, make some serious credits for ourselves. I had a feeling you'd be on board. We're just a couple of rooks. Okay, when are we ever gonna have a chance like this again?
Let's pretend for a second Delgado's correct, and there's information here about Chris's legacy. Once we get rid of him, we'll dig up garbage ourselves and sell whatever we find to Neva. We'll be rolling in credits.
No action that you can take during a mission or no alternative way that you can solve something will lead to different consequences in the game. Starfield, despite all of the smoke and mirrors it puts up, is an extremely linear game where the player has next to zero agency about the outcome of any mission or interaction. And even if there is a slight change in outcome, it will not have any lasting effects or consequences on the world around you. This goes for the main story, it goes for the faction quests, even the Crimson Fleet one, which I'll break down in this video too, and it also goes for all of the side content.
Oh, hello, I don't think we've met. Are you by chance new here? Are Babri, you're that dangerous ex-convict everyone's been talking about. Well, don't worry, I'm not scared of you. I don't think you're dangerous. Do you?
After playing this game for about 80 hours, I now think of Starfield more like a Far Cry, but in space. But instead of cutscenes, you get to pick what your character says in every conversation. which is nice, it just will not affect anything in a meaningful way. And if you don't believe me, well, in this video I'm going to prove it to you. I'll be showcasing every last trick that Bethesda pulls to create the illusion of a role-playing game while not actually committing to anything. I'll show you where it all breaks down, where it works and where it doesn't work, and I'll also show you that if you try to push it and do something just in a slightly different order than what the developers wanted you to do, the game has a habit of soft-locking your missions, meaning you often have to revert to a previous save in order to continue with the game. So if you're excited to get your hands dirty and really get into how this game works, well then let's begin. And yeah, obviously there will be spoilers, big spoilers. So if you haven't already, play the game first before watching this, because I do really think it is a game worth playing. And I can promise you, if you watch this video before playing the game, it will ruin a big part of it for you. So with that out of the way, let's get going. So just to pull it back before we begin, starting with some basics, I want to define what a role-playing game is. If that sounds like a dumb thing to do, you're not wrong, but we all know that the term RPG has been thrown out a lot in recent years, being slapped on any game that has levels above the enemy's heads and a colored loot tier system that ranges from blue to purple to yellow. This is a trend that even Starfield couldn't resist to pass up on, as this is exactly what we see in the game as well. For the purposes of this video, however, this is not what I'll be talking about when I'll be referring to role-playing. Instead, I'll be using the term role-playing quite in the literal sense, how people used to use the word. Playing the role of a character in a set universe, where the character has a background, a bunch of skills, a bunch of strengths and weaknesses, and the ability to make decisions in the game based on all of those things. To, of course, alter the course of events or outcomes of certain scenarios. When I'm playing these games, hopefully like many other people out there, I like to pretend that the character that I built is literally me, and that I live in this universe, and that I get to make all the decisions that I would have made if I were that character in that universe. I quite literally take on the role of this character. I think it is the best way for me to immerse myself in games like these, and this is the experience that I was hoping that Starfield would give me. And to be fair, at the start, it did, for a little bit. But then as I started playing more, I realized quite fast that the most important parts of this whole role-playing thing were severely missing, which are the consequences. Because if there are no consequences to the things you say or to the things you do, then it also doesn't matter what you say and what you do. And thus the illusion is broken. And to just get to the absolute bottom of this, we're going to start with the very basics and then work our way up all the way to the most complicated scenarios. And in this case, to start, the basics is the character creation.
You know who you are? New recruit for Argos Extractors? Ring any bells? Any of this look familiar?
Honestly, the character creation is always the first step in defining what type of role you're going to take on in this world. And ideally, whatever you pick, whatever you put your sliders to, will come with a set of advantages and disadvantages that you will feel across your playthrough. But in Starfield, this is already where we stumble a bit, because this is not the case at all. And the character creation screen does almost nothing to change one's average playthrough. For starters, your appearance, your race, or your sex does not in any way affect anything any character says to you, not even your companions or your romantic options, as all of the characters are attracted to anyone and also happen to be bisexual.
That is kind of you. You also have a lot going.
This is, of course, just a nitpick and a very minor complaint, and something that some people might even prefer. But again, we're starting very small and we're building up all the way to the big stuff. The next thing we'll look at is our background. And you would assume that the background that you choose will affect your gameplay in one way or another. But your background in Starfield essentially boils down to picking and choosing 3 different skills. And even though you might think at the start of your playthrough that these skills can make a big difference, you'll soon learn that every time that you level up, you will also get a new skill to pick from. And with how fast you earn XP and level up in this game, and just how many skills there are to unlock, your background quickly becomes irrelevant, because by the time you're level 4, you could theoretically have had any background and still end up with the same skills as any other character. And by level 10, it becomes difficult to even see what you chose to begin with. So there might be something very minor that will alter in your playthrough early on if you chose a different background, but nothing significant enough and nothing lasting past the 1 or 2 hour mark. And then last up when it comes to the character customization, there are also the traits, which are like skills, but you can't unlock more of them as you play through the game. They're just an extra thing. If you're wondering how impactful these are, well, first of all, they are optional, and you'll soon learn that anything optional in Starfield has next to no impact on the game whatsoever. But just to give you a couple of examples, you could choose to have your character have a history in the streets of Neon. So then every time that you will talk about the streets of Neon in the game, you'll get an extra dialogue option. Another one might be being religious. So then when you visit the religious building of your choosing, you will have a chest there with some low tier loot in it. These are nice bonuses and nice to have, but apart from maybe 20 seconds of playtime of going to the chest or the couple of times that you can select an extra option of dialogue, which doesn't change anything by the way, as I'll soon show.
Same old song, huh?
None of these things will alter your playthrough in any significant way. Now this might sound nitpicky, and again this is because we're starting small, but do keep in mind that games of a similar type within the same genre have done these things in a different way in the past. Even games that Bethesda has made. Fallout 3 would be a good example of having to invest points into your character early on into specific skills that you will feel the effects of long into your playthrough. And some of these things can never be changed. Like for example, the gender of your character. And even this can result in slight advantages or disadvantages in all sorts of scenarios, like conversations with certain characters, being able to romance different characters, or even an advantage or disadvantage in combat because some perks are gender exclusive. Again, I'll mention for the third time that this is not all a super big deal, but now we're gonna go up a step and see how the same philosophy of making your choices not matter at all and see how it applies to the rest of the game. So where do we go from here? Well, I think that the next logical step to take is to look at the conversations that you have with the other characters in the game. The things you can say to different characters to lead conversations in different directions. And again, you might not believe me now, but whatever you say to any given character in this game actually has no impact on the outcome of the conversation.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Here I am arguing with my partner, and you're just standing right here. Issa Eklund, the hyphenated Eklund in our glorious company's branding. I see my partner has brought a labor dispute to my office. Wherever did you meet your new friend?
Look,
I'm
this isn't the
jealous.
time or the place.
A colleague from
I disagree.
Constellation.
I don't see it. Yes, the daring explorers. My partner is so infatuated with. You should hear him reciting that speech.
There's no need to go into that.
For our first example, we'll be looking at one of the faction quests for the Region Industries. The first mission in that questline orders you to pick up a simple coffee, only to be greeted by an ex-employee, the person that you replaced, who is very upset about that you replaced him and wants you dead. This is what I believe to be a decent example of how conversations will typically go in Starfield, but truly, you can pick about any conversation in this game and it will follow the same structure that I'm about to lay down. As soon as we get into the conversation, we'll be meted with the dialogue and the dialogue options. And every one of these dialogue options always falls into either one of two categories. You have the, what I'll call, continue conversation category, which I'll show in the green, and the hold conversation option, which I'll show in the yellow. Of course, the amount of answers that each conversation will come with isn't always the same, and these options are also not always split evenly. Some conversations have more options, some of them have fewer, but it always comes back to these two categories. Now the yellow options, they don't actually move the conversation forward. Usually, your character will ask something about a specific topic and then get an answer, only to circle back to the exact same dialogue box that you had before.
You don't even know your own boss's boss? Ularu is Ryujin's head of operations, or resident shark, if you ask me. If she smells blood in the water, you're dead. Like, who knows? I looked at someone wrong. The coffee wasn't hot. They didn't even have the decency to tell me. They just had security escort me out of the building, like some criminal!
And as far as I'm aware, these dialogue options are completely pointless. Asking for additional information is only for the player himself, but it will never do anything to open up new gameplay paths. It will never reveal hidden information required for a side quest or a secret. It will never give you other dialogue options because you now know more about the conversation. It will never alter the situation between you and the surrounding NPCs. So now you might say, what's the big deal? Not a big problem to have a lot of pointless dialogue if it gives more context to the player. And I can partly agree to that. But then we get to the other category of conversations, which is what I called move the conversation forward. And with these, we have another issue, which is that no matter which of the dialogue options you choose, the NPC will always conclude his response in the exact same way.
Yeah, I bet you are. No one's ever sorry in this business.
They were gonna get rid of me.
I bet Ularu was just waiting for the moment to hire you.
Now that I've been terminated, it's only a matter of time before they send you after me. So I'm taking matters into my own hands. Believe me, it's either you or me.
And this is what you'll see in almost every conversation with every NPC in the game. No matter how much you say, how many things you ask beforehand, or how much you try to piss someone off, the final reaction will always be the same. And so the conversation is incredibly linear. You have in fact zero control over the outcome of a conversation and who will hate you or like you by the end of it. There are some exceptions to this, but again, we'll get into that when we get to it. So back to the conversations. What all of this means is that when it comes to these conversations, it just doesn't matter what option you choose. And as a result, you could play through this game skipping all dialogue, just always choosing the most top option because that will always move the conversation forward. And every NPC will like you or dislike you just as much as someone who carefully went through all the dialogue in the game and picked their answers carefully. You can straight up beeline this game from start to finish, never knowing what any NPC has said and be just fine. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to play like this because that would be extremely boring and immersion breaking. But if anything, it goes to show how little the conversations in this game matter. And thus, by extension of that, the skills that you would invest into to alter the conversations, they also do not matter. Because even the special answers that you can give only when you have a certain skill will still cause the NPCs to end their response in the exact same way.
Yes, it's not quite cracking the Enigma code, but it will give us a significant tactical advantage. We'll be able to infer everything from battle plans to meal consumption. Not that we'd care about that sort of thing, outside of the effects of diet on combat readiness. And yes, there are certain kinks to be worked out, missing parts and the occasional traumatic injury here and there, but it's all part of the adventure.
Okay, so conversations aren't all what they seem to be. But that doesn't mean that there's no role-playing. Maybe your words don't have an impact, but certainly your actions will, right? Well, not really. Let's go through this again by circling back to the same mission with the coffee, because after the player inevitably ends up at the exact same point in the conversation, this man will pull up his gun and you are given two ways to resolve this. Either you talk him out of it or you kill him. A clear choice. But don't let these two different ways fool you. Just like there are multiple dialogue options, that doesn't mean that the conversation concludes in a different way. And the same is true here. Just because there's two different ways to approach this mission doesn't mean that there will be consequences for choosing either option. Whether I decide to kill the man or persuade him to simply leave me alone, when at the end of the mission I return to my boss, she will mention that she is impressed with how I handled the situation.
Some of us are impressed by how you handle the situation and would like to try you out in a different role at the company.
Now, this isn't some one-off where my boss is just impressed no matter what I do because I'm such a good employee or because she can respect both approaches. No, this is how Starfield works throughout 99% of its quests. I can get a mission from that same boss later on in the game that then tells me that I need to sneak around and quietly upload a virus to a computer without being spotted.
Remember, this is confidential. We can't have anyone at CalCorp getting suspicious. When all is said and done, It should be as if you were never there. Here's the data slate. Good luck.
If instead of doing that, I walk into the company and proceed to murder everybody in sight, I will at most get a slap on the wrist, after which she will tell me that I did a good job anyways and that I will get a promotion.
I heard you made quite the scene in the trade tower. Something I explicitly told you we wanted to avoid. If you recall, setbacks mean a lot of things for a lot of people. Payoffs, cover stories, cleanup crews. You get my drift. The cleaner your work, the more intact your payments stay. I'm sure you understand. Lucky for you, there'll be no docks in pay today. Just try to be more careful in the future. So, now that we know you're capable of handling some light cyber mischief, let's try your hand at a little framing.
I can push this to the extreme as well. In that same coffee mission, again, instead of just murdering the man, I can, on top of that, also murder everybody in the city, go to the company that I work for, murder everybody in the company, including all the customers, including the boss I am working for, which will, instead of dying, just fall on the floor because she's part of an active quest, and you cannot fail active quests in this game, and thus you cannot kill the quest giver. And then, after that, I can leave the building, instantly re-enter to revive my boss, and she will once again tell me I did a really good job and that I'll be getting a promotion.
Here.
Something you need?
So, congratulations. You've been promoted. Not bad for your first day, right?
And with this situation laid out like this, I hope you can see that no matter what you do, there aren't any real consequences for it. And again, this linearity and this no consequences approach doesn't just apply to the side missions or the faction missions. It also applies to the main quest line. For example, also on Neon, during the mission where you have to pick up the artifact with Walter, you'll be visiting Walter's company. He has a company there, and in that company he has employees, and even his wife works there. But on this mission, he is also your companion, and he does what companions do best. They help you in combat. So what happens if I enter Walter's company and I start opening fire on his employees and wife? Well, instead of disliking me, he simply starts helping me kill his own wife and employees. And once everyone is dead, his wife will get up from the ground and the two will start talking like nothing ever happened. I have seen reviews that claim that there are real choices in this game and that your actions really have consequences. But this is perhaps the biggest lie surrounding Starfield. The only quote-unquote real choice there is during all these missions on Neon can be seen at the very end, just before you have to get back to the Constellation, because just as you're about to escape with the artifact, there's another bad guy stopping you in your path. And once again, you will have two decisions. One of which is to persuade this person to leave you alone. The other one is to attack him. And based on this single one decision, Walter will react to the adventure in a completely different way. You let the man live and he'll be very happy.
I agree. This life suits both of us, don't you think?
You kill the man and he'll be very sad. That does indeed mean that if you literally kill every single person on Neon, including Walter's employees, including his wife, but spare this one bad guy at the end, Walter will give you a positive conversation at the end of the mission.
All in all, a great success. Thank you for allowing me to tag along with Constellation's newest star.
But I know what comes next. Now you're gonna tell me that surely the game cannot keep track of everything that the player does, right? And to answer that, I would like to point you towards another game that I really like, which is Fallout New Vegas.
From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Or more recently, The Outer Worlds.
Ah, there you are. Wondering what's going on, eh?
Both Fallout New Vegas and The Outer Worlds give you the freedom to do whatever you like, kill every NPC that you like, and it will alter the story in a somewhat meaningful way based on your actions. This is not always true, and sometimes it locks in your choices, like for example, at the start of Fallout New Vegas when you first make contact with the Rangers and decide to help them out. But it is far more open-ended very much non-linear. And even though I am aware that neither of these games are made by Bethesda, I think it really could have helped Starfield here. I am very much of the opinion that just because a company didn't do this thing in a game released 8 or 10 or 12 years ago, that doesn't mean that it couldn't have done it now. And this argument becomes all the more true when you look at how Starfield approaches its New Game Plus, with becoming Starborn.
Although you leave this universe behind, a new universe awaits you. Who will you be in this one? What choices will you make?
At the end of the game, when you've collected all the artifacts, you can make the choice to travel to a parallel universe and do everything all over again. But you will keep all your skills, and you will remember everything that has happened. The game literally asks the player, who will you be in this universe? What choices will you make? And I thought that was a very interesting question to ask, especially because, well, now it is not just the player that knows what will happen, but the game also knows that the player knows. And this could truly open up some interesting conversations and scenarios that weren't there previously.
Excuse me, this is a private... Wait. There's something familiar about you.
But of course, this is not what happens. After you become Starborn, you have the option to either skip the entire campaign or play it again. And if you choose to play it again, you will at certain moments be able to select extra special dialogue to alter the course of events. The moment where this is most notable is being able to save an extra crew member. On your first playthrough, you'll be forced to make a choice towards the end of the game to either help your friends or defend the artifact. In typical Starfield fashion, no matter which option you choose, the outcome is always the same, that one of your friends will die. But when you're Starborn, this can be avoided by warning them about the attack beforehand. It's a pretty neat feature, but this is also where the cool interactions end. There will be other moments during your playthrough as a Starborn where you get extra dialogue options. But as we have learned previously, dialogue options will always result in the same outcome. And for the Starborn dialogue options, it is no different.
What? Okay. Just trying to earn a living. Let's talk. Yeah, fine, I'll talk. Last time he was here, Moira kept yelling about the Lady of Love. Singing songs. I like it.
Venus? That's only one planet. Hardly an entire patrol route.
They move the conversation forward without having to bribe or persuade someone, but it's more of a nice to have feature instead of something that drastically alters the way you play. And this is perhaps the biggest flaw of becoming Starborn, because according to the game, according to the story, the character, me, already knows everything that has happened and will happen during the course of this campaign. Which makes it all the more strange that I still have to talk to people and search all the places for information that I technically already know. I already know where Barrett will be kept hostage. I already know who the seller of the artifact is on Neon. I already know where he will be. I already know everything that will happen in this campaign. And yet I'm still spending half of this campaign chasing leads to information that I already know. And if I ever try to use my knowledge that I have from previous playthrough to, let's say, take a shortcut somewhere, the game will not play ball. It will present you with a locked door, an NPC you cannot interact with, or a soft lock of the mission. You cannot go and rescue Barrett from the Crimson Fleet, even if you know where he's being kept hostage, because the door to where he's being kept hostage is blocked off with boxes until the exact point in the questline where I need to free him. I cannot talk to the seller of the artifact on Neon or confront him if I'm not at that exact quest step yet. I can't even bring up the fact that I know some people are lying in conversations, like for example this woman who points me to the elevator that I know will lock me up in there. Despite me having that information, despite me knowing what will happen, I still cannot avoid it if I want to proceed with the campaign.
Wait, this clearly isn't the executive level. He's on to us.
Another example, find the maps that Sam's dad is holding. You know that Sam's dad has the maps, you know they're in his room, but when I play again with the Starborn feature, I cannot simply tell Sam that his father has those things in his room. Sam still thinks they're at the vault in the bank, so I have to go through helping out with the robbery, finding out that it isn't there, but at least with my Starborn dialogue option, I will be able to foresee that Sam's father is like a father figure to him.
What? You just figured that all out by yourself, huh?
This is where I believe a more open-ended quest structure would have done wonders for replayability. Players who play Fallout New Vegas for a second or a third time can widely alter the way they play through these games based on the things that they now know about the story and about certain characters. They can essentially cheat the game in ways that you could only do with prior knowledge. And even though it was a cool thing, it would never go beyond simply cheating the game. But now, in Starfield, there is an in-game, in-universe reason for the player to have all this knowledge. And to my biggest disappointment, you cannot do anything with that knowledge apart save that one friend at that one moment in the campaign and skip through some dialogue. Now, with all of that being said, it is now time to talk about the big elephant in the room. And the one piece of content that everybody will likely point at when talking about player choice and how Starfield does actually have player choices that matter, which is the Crimson Fleet questline.
Suit yourself. You know, I have to admit, I'm a bit surprised. My instincts told me you were the right person, but I suppose I was wrong.
In short, the Crimson Fleet questline is the one that can be initiated by getting arrested in United Colonies territory for stealing or, well, anything else really. It's really easy to start this quest. When you start it, you'll be brought into an interrogation chamber where you'll be asked to go undercover in the Crimson Fleet, which is a pirate group, by the way. The one objective is to wipe them out, but this time from the inside. Now, the reason why people will point to this quest as an example of a proper quest where your choices matter is because you can decline the offer, after which you'll be thrown into jail and you'll now see the big words "SysDev is now your enemy" on your screen, making it as if they are an active faction that you might be able to befriend or make your enemy. Much like in Fallout New Vegas, where individual factions, cities, or even individuals might like or dislike you based on the choices you have made. In Starfield though, it doesn't really work in the same way. And this is just a simple trick that Bethesda has up its sleeve, and denying the quest here doesn't actually alter the game in any way.
Some friends of mine heard how you handled SysDev. They, want a word.
It all comes back to Bethesda simply being too afraid that the player might miss out on any piece of content. Regardless if you choose to cooperate or not, you will still be able to join the Crimson Fleet, get the exact same missions, do the exact same things, all the way to the end of the questline. If you choose to cooperate, you will simply have to report to SysDev on top of what you're doing. And if at any point you decide you don't want to cooperate anymore, you simply don't. And then the quest will continue as if you never decided to cooperate at all. Now, many people have made this out to be some sort of crazy mission where the player plays a double agent and slowly decides which side to choose, but this is not at all an accurate depiction of what is actually happening. This questline, just like everything else in the game, works very much like the main missions. You can murder every non-essential character in the Crimson Fleet headquarters and you'll still be welcomed into their fleet, able to climb the ranks. You'll be promoted with multiple dead bodies still piled up in the background. The final mission, if you decide to work with SysDev, is again literally just to go into the headquarters of the Crimson Fleet and kill everybody. But if I wanted to do that before I get to the exact point in the questline, it's not a possibility. So no, you in fact do not have to be careful around the Crimson Fleet. The only fail condition is on the side of SysDev, which is just this small optional extra thing added on top of all these missions. It's not a faction, it doesn't operate as a faction, it doesn't even properly exist outside of this questline. If you finish the questline and take the side of SysDev, you can, after that mission is over, proceed to still kill everybody in SysDev, kill everybody on the ship, and not only will SysDev remain friends with you and continue to operate with you,
I don't think you're dangerous. Do you?
In a lot of cases, the game simply doesn't know what to do and has no reaction to the player killing dozens of SysDev employees. Now, I have plenty more examples of quests that might give the illusion of choice but ultimately don't result in different consequences. Like one where a ship has been taken over by evil AI. So do you help the people or do you help the AI? Doesn't really matter because in both cases the humans die and the ship Graf drives away. Or what about the one where you help a group of colonists that want to settle near Paradiso? Do you blow up the ship and kill them and side with Paradiso? Or do you give them a grav drive and let them go to a different planet? In both cases, the ship vanishes and no one cares for what or how you did it. And that mission is one of the better ones in the game, by the way, where there's actually a third option to let them live mutually together. But even that doesn't give that much of a different result. And if you become Starborn and blow up the ship, go through all the steps before talking to the security or the people in Paradiso, the game will act as if you've already talked to them after blowing up the ship. And when you try to talk more about the ship, the game will simply bug out. What could have easily been a deep questline similar to that of the Brotherhood in Fallout New Vegas, with the option to blow up their bunker and seeing how different groups of civilization side or go against you. It doesn't matter what you do, it all results in the same thing, and if you try to do it creatively, the game will not play ball. So yeah, that was the video. I'll just wrap it up here, even though I've got like 5 more examples written down, and I think we got to the bottom of it all. Starfield's a good single player, and there's a lot to it, but it's not a good role-playing game. And maybe that is the way that Bethesda wanted this game to be. I don't know. I don't work there, but it is not the way that I wanted this game to be. And I think the same would go for at least a small portion of the player base. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys another time.